Ba la 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 la, lots of fees are piling up for merchants this season. Can the Credit Card Competition Act bring relief? Hello, and welcome back to Beyond the Bill Number, the podcast where we dive into the bills that matter, the debates behind them, and why you, yes, you, should care. I'm your host, Stephen, and I'm joined today on this festive episode by the ever-curious Sarah.
It is that time of year, and when you've bought way too many gifts, you might have maxed out your holiday cheer and your credit cards. So naturally, what better topic to unwrap than the Credit Card Competition Act? And we have our festive sweatshirts on for everybody to see.
Look, we're all very festive. Look at this. I'm Star Wars festive, of course. Yes, it's Christmas time again, and of course, as we all know, Christmas is about one thing: buying stuff. Today, we're digging into the Credit Card Competition Act, or as I like to call it, swipe right for savings. Merchants are cheering, banks are frowning, and consumers? Well, we'll get into what this could mean for you. Sarah, are you ready to swipe through the details?
Oh, I was born ready. We're talking about credit cards today, and as always, I'm just very curious what credit cards look like in the UK for you. I know a lot about what's going on here with them, and some things that are problematic in this act for the critics are things that I definitely partake in with my credit cards, but I kind of wanted to open this up and see what's going on that side of the pond when it comes to credit cards.
It's one of those areas where actually there isn't an enormous amount of difference, I would say, between America and the US. And that's just because the credit card industry is a global business. It's not just America. So in Britain, just as in pretty much any country around the world, you'll see credit cards are dominated by these two networks, MasterCard and Visa. And in the same way, you can get credit cards from any number of different issuers, but they're always going to have Visa or MasterCard slapped on them. And then you've got American Express, and hardly anyone has American Express because there's a lot of places that don't take them, because I think I'm right in saying that they charge a lot more. Actually, their fees are much higher. But personally, I'm not a big credit card fan. I very rarely use mine. I get these monthly statements from my credit card company, all very sad, just saying, haven't used a credit card again, and trying to persuade me to use them. And you've got all these special offers, these points and things, and it just doesn't do anything for me at all.
Wow.
I only like to buy things when I've got the money to buy them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I am a credit card fiend. When I started my coding boot camp, we did these tech lunch Tuesdays, and we all taught each other about other things that we had come to the coding boot camp, like with knowledge about. I did one on taxes, but this other guy in my team, he did an entire presentation about how you can game credit cards, this process that you should be doing, how you should be closing your credit card every 2 years and opening a new one, because you can re-qualify for these new member points. And I am such a little fiend with the points. I'm always scheming. I'm always trying to figure out how to do X, Y, Z, and the other to get points. And when my husband and I went on our honeymoon like 2.5 years ago, we barely paid any money and went all the way to French Polynesia because I had just gamed the point system so well throughout our wedding. I knew I was going to be making huge purchases during the wedding because it's a wedding. And so I was immediately qualifying for all these sign-up benefits. But I think one of the biggest reasons I am very comfortable with credit cards is I also treat mine like a debit card. I never put anything on it that I know I won't have 100% of the money to pay off within 30 days. I get paid bi-weekly. I pay down my card every other week. And like sometimes that's all I have on my card because I've been good and not buying too many Christmas presents. But then other times, I might need 2 pay periods to pay it off, but I use it the exact same way.
The interest rates on credit card are absolutely astronomical. If you leave money on your credit card, you are absolutely getting gouged by these credit card companies. And so I've always deeply resented that. So in times when I have had money on my credit card, I've done a similar thing to you. Rather than gaming the points, though, you can game the introductory interest-free period offer. So when you start a credit card, I don't know, maybe it's the same in America, certainly here, they'll say, hey, if you open a credit card with us, we'll give you 6 or 9 months interest-free. And a special balance transfer rate. So I did for a while, kept opening all these new credit cards and transferring my balance across as I paid it down, so I didn't have to pay any interest. Obviously, you pay a balance transfer fee, but it's nowhere near as high as the interest.
As the interest,
If you do have money in a credit card, you can do that. I'm not now. This was quite a long time ago. It wouldn't surprise me if they've put various things in place to stop that because it was quite a common practice.
I know
But yeah,
they
I
can
just
game
don't
us,
like
but
the
we
idea
can't
of
game
just
them.
yeah, absolutely. I don't like the idea of just paying them loads of money every month for nothing.
Right. I'm with you.
Pay it
I'm
off.
with you. Yeah. This act is a super interesting act to be talking about because it is something where it's kind of one of those things that at least I feel like nobody thinks about because it's just the way that it is. You're like, oh yeah, I know my credit card charges a fee and I know that I'm getting told if I pay with cash, I get a 5% discount. A lot of people I think just think, oh, it's easier to use cash and people like cash better. Cash is king, whatever. But it's like, no, you're just not throwing your money away, lighting it on fire because the credit card company is taking a little bit off the top every time you swipe.
Credit in general is at the absolute heart of capitalism. It's the ability to actually lend money and charge interest on it was exactly what started the first central banks in London and Amsterdam and led to sort of capitalism as we know it. And then the credit card boom. Which started back in the 50s and 60s, I think, but credit cards didn't really take off in Britain until the 1970s, and that was really when our sort of consumer boom started because it allowed people to suddenly go out and buy things they couldn't afford, and that's the business model, isn't it? There's something deeply unpleasant, I think, about the credit card sort of business, which is say you can't afford this, that doesn't matter, buy it anyway,
Right.
and then you just get into more and more debt if you're not careful. So you just have to be very disciplined and keep on top of it. And I think that's sort of my suspicion coming through. My parents were the same. I think you would tend to inherit these things from your parents.
Yes.
They never borrowed money. We just didn't buy anything.
Right.
We had nothing in it because they didn't buy stuff. But that's just not the way the world is these days. Let's start at the top. So what exactly are these swipe fees and why are they such a big deal? And just before we get into this as well, we don't swipe credit cards anymore. We tap them. So shouldn't
That's
these
true.
be tap fees?
You know, I think that's just a little bit too new and too technologically advanced for this policy. But
Yes. It is.
yes, I mean, that's a good point. Swipe fees or interchange fees are the charges that merchants pay every time you use a credit card to make a purchase. And Visa and MasterCard dominate the US credit card market and apparently the UK one. And they handle about 80% of the transactions. And for interest, American Express is next at about 10% and then Discover's at about 7%. And then there's a few other smaller players, maybe, local people, things like that. But that's the demographics of the companies.
Absolutely. And as we mentioned as well, we should distinguish between credit card issuers, which is the main name on your credit card, and it can be a bank, an airline, some other type of organization. As I say, my credit card is actually issued by my supermarket, by Tesco. And the credit card networks are the ones that actually manage the transactions and do all the business. And it's the networks that we're talking about here, which is the smaller symbol on your credit card, which will almost certainly be either Visa or MasterCard. And another little interesting fact that I discovered, while Amex and Discover will only issue their own credit cards, so if you've got an American Express card, it will always be issued by American Express and nobody else. Visa and MasterCard don't actually do that at all. So you'll never have a credit card that is a Visa credit card. It will always be issued by some other bank or some other organization.
That's right. I just got a Marriott Visa. And then the swipe fees are also set by these big networks. And although a portion of the revenue does go to the issuing bank, it mostly goes to these networks that keep them up and running. So Visa and MasterCard are the only ones largely calling the shots on these fees because they do have such market dominance. And they do the thing where they can kind of be issued by anyone. They usually fall between 1.5 and 3% per transaction. That seems like a small amount, right? But think about this. If you're a small business owner and you're selling $50 sweaters all month long, 3% on every single sale really starts to add up quickly.
Yeah, it absolutely does, doesn't it? So small business in particular will have really, really tight margins. So an extra 3%, or certainly if these go up by 1% or whatever, then that will really, really hit their business and can make the difference between a business being profitable and loss making. And so these small businesses are really getting squeezed. And obviously they have no choice in this as well. So they either have to eat the cost or pass it on to us. Hello, higher prices. or cash-only discounts. So swipe fees are a pain, especially for businesses, and that's where this bill, the Credit Card Competition Act, comes in, right? So what's it trying to do?
You've got it. So the Credit Card Competition Act, or CCCA, says that, hey, big banks, let's break up this swipe fee party. And it targets these banks with over 100 billion in assets. So, the really big guys. And it says that their credit cards need to have 2 unaffiliated payment networks. So instead of your credit card being locked into Visa's network, you could also do it on Discover or Amex or even a smaller competitor. That way, merchants can choose within the payment network based off the lowest fees or the best terms, which ultimately will save businesses or you money if the businesses are passing on the cost to you.
Absolutely interesting. So it's like a forced dating game for credit card networks, which should result in more competition, which, as we hope, the competition will drive down fees. And supporters say that it's already worked for debit cards, right?
Exactly. So back in 2010, the Durbin Amendment did something really similar for debit card transactions and required this 2-network situation. And the result is that merchants saved billions of dollars annually. And this type of stuff we see even with our telephony networks. So when you send a text message, there's different kinds of networks that you can send it over. It might be the big names like AT&T or T-Mobile, but also there's really small telephony businesses all around the US, especially in kind of rural areas. And they charge different fractions of a penny for transmitting your data. And people will choose the cheapest route for each one. So they make the most money off of, the base that they're charging you.
Absolutely. So, well, it certainly sounds like a win for businesses then, if there's more competition and if these fees come down.
Right again, Stephen. Supporters love this bill because it could lower fees and save merchants money and break up this Visa MasterCard duopoly. But small businesses in particular could really see some good relief. And this is maybe something where they could reinvest in their business or even lower prices to customers and get some money back into their wallets.
But what about the other side of the coin? I'm guessing that not everybody's on board with the bill.
First, there's rewards problems, or things that I like. So a lot of these cashback offers or airline miles are funded by these swipe fees. And if the fees go down, the banks may cut back on rewards. And that means, fewer free flights to grandma's house for Christmas. But something that a lot of people don't understand is a lot of these costs are passed to the buyer. So these points that you're getting, you're actually paying for. You're just paying the credit card company every time you use it. And then they're like, okay, here's a little zhuzh on the top for you.
Absolutely. So obviously some people will benefit more, won't they? So people such as yourself who uses a lot of these points and really games them, you're probably getting a greater benefit from your points than the extra money you're spending. But for a lot of people who aren't interested in points and don't use them, they're obviously paying for your free holidays.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're all paying the fees on the top. Yes. And that's not all. Critics also worry about security. Visa and MasterCard have poured billions into fraud prevention systems. If merchants start switching to lower cost networks, critics argue that could mean a lot more fraud risk.
So cheaper for businesses, but riskier for shoppers?
That's the debate that we're kind of having. And finally, the big banks say that the bill just adds unnecessary regulation that could disrupt the credit card system overall.
So what's the bottom line then, Sarah? If the Credit Card Competition Act passes, who wins and who loses?
Well, small businesses definitely win. They could save bigger on swipe fees, especially during these busy holiday seasons like the one that we're currently in. And that extra cash might let them lower prices or invest elsewhere. For consumers, though, it's a little bit more complicated. Lower fees could mean better prices for us, but also losing out on those juicy cash back and travel rewards might sting. And there is the additional fraud risk there. So it's a little bit of a trade-off.
And what about the big picture? Could this bill change the whole payment ecosystem?
Yes, potentially yes. It could open the door for more smaller networks to develop, making the credit card market more diverse. But that also raises questions about how smooth or secure that transition would be.
Well, Sarah, it sounds like the Credit Card Competition Act is stirring up a lot of holiday debate. More savings for merchants versus fewer perks for consumers and possibly riskier transactions. So what's next for the bill?
Well, it's still being debated in Congress and was proposed a couple years ago. Again, we're talking about it now. So it definitely seems like something that the general ecosystem is at least interested in pursuing and looking at. But with the swipe fees costing merchants billions a year, you can bet this fight is not going away anytime soon, and there probably will be some movement somewhere. And whether you're on the team that's, I want to lower fees, or you're on the team that's, hey, I need to book that trip to Bora Bora, leave me alone, it's one that we're really going to be keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. And to wrap up this episode, just like those last-minute holiday gifts, remember, the next time you swipe that card, there's a whole lot of legislation behind that tiny beep.
Well said, Stephen. Thank you so much for tuning into Beyond the Bill Number. Stay merry, stay informed, and we'll see you next time.
Happy holidays, everybody.